Joining us. Good afternoon, good evening. Quick show of hands. Who here at their company knows of or is responsible for file transfer? That's SFTP, FTP, AS2. Awesome. You're in the right place. I'm Matt Matthews. I'm joined by Russ Boyer, our principal SA, and we're going to talk about file transfer and specifically the future of file transfer as it relates to the cloud. Quick run through of what we're going to cover today. So let's first understand some terminology. We're going to talk about managed file transfer, or MFT, and compare that to a cloud version of that, or a cloud MFT. We'll talk about some use cases that we've seen from our customers. Then we'll go right to a demo, and Russ is going to give an awesome demo that's really an end-to-end story of how companies implement a business process to get files from their business partners into the cloud and into a usable state so they can actually process that data and use it. And then we'll talk a little bit about AWS Transfer Family and some of the features that Russ shows in the demo, and hopefully we'll have some time for a few questions. Sound good? All right, let's get started. So what is MFT? And I actually think the M in MFT is a little bit of a misnomer because it's not actually managed at all. But MFT is generally in the industry known to be a set of capabilities that are built on top of traditional file transfer protocols like SFTP and whatnot that are really there to help a business build what we call a business-to-business file exchange. So helping companies get data, again, from their external business partners into their business so it can be usable. These capabilities help them do this in a way that's secure, automated, and monitored. Because they need to actually keep track of what's going on. And like I said, it builds on top of these well-known protocols. Some of these have been around since the beginning of the internet. FTP had its 50th birthday a couple years ago. And they're known and trusted protocols for file transfer. But ultimately, what the M in MFT is meant to indicate is that it's helping an IT team to govern, automate, and monitor their file transfers. And some of the common use cases we see for MFT, and there are actually quite a bit, but some of the common ones we see are specifically in some regulated industries. That could be financial services or healthcare or pharmaceuticals, where there's some type of document exchange. Maybe it's a healthcare claim or a financial statement, things of that nature. And the exchange of that data needs to be carefully governed. Or in areas like manufacturing or supply chains where there's a trading partner relationship and it's transactional data, so purchase orders, shipment notifications, things of that nature. Very common to see MFT being used for those types of documents. And then a very different use case, content distribution. That could be anything from software for client machines that needs to get distributed, or audio, video, multimedia capability, things like that, or even just market reports or other types of documents that need to go out to subscribers. So we see a variety of these use cases, and there are actually many, many more. Because it's a general purpose technology, it's used for many, many different things. But here are some of the things that we have seen from our customers. And MFT is found across many industries, and it's been here for a long time, and we think it's going to be here for a long time to come. But can also be very challenging. So what we have on the left on this slide is a traditional corporate data center, where the company has basically set up an infrastructure for file transfer. So these are servers with networking, some type of software. It could be open source software, it could be some type of commercially licensed file transfer software, and that is opened up for their external partners to connect to. And many times, as I noted before, many times this is handling business or mission critical types of communications. So this has to be a 24/7 operations. There's a lot of infrastructure to manage across the connectivity, across the storage, the configuration for how your partners connect, usernames, passwords, keys, things of that nature. And then one of the big problems we see is that the data that's stored becomes somewhat isolated. It's sitting in these file transfer servers, and getting it into a usable form into your databases or your data lakes or your applications takes another set of steps and a lot of work to get there. And then just even mundane things like patching. So having infrastructure where you have to maintain servers that need patching and constant upkeep. So there's a lot of challenges with existing MFTs that we see. And that's really why we see a lot of companies looking for how the cloud can help them modernize their existing file transfer infrastructure. So specifically, Cloud MFT helps IT teams deliver an MFT without all that operational burden while still meeting their security and compliance requirements. And being something that's in the cloud, it gets to take advantage of the inherent capabilities of the cloud, specifically things relating to scale, availability, and security. And I think what is the most important part of a cloud MFT solution is that it integrates with all the cloud capabilities. So if you're building applications, analytics solutions, you're using a lot of these cloud capabilities already, and you want that data from your partners to be more immediately accessible inside the cloud for that use. So to kind of summarize that, the Cloud MFT has a number of benefits. It scales with your business. You don't have to think about the infrastructure you need ahead of time. A lot of companies see either seasonal types of peaks or constant growth, and they have to think about how to scale that infrastructure themselves. It gives you operational visibility, so the ability to actually understand what's going on with your file transfers, make sure as an IT team you can offer some type of SLA to your users. It gives you the capabilities to secure and be compliant to whatever regulations that you need to conform to. And specifically, as an AWS service, it's integrated with the services. Then I'll talk to things like storage, Amazon S3 or EFS, things like IAM, things like Lambda. Those things are well integrated, so you can actually build complete solutions with your file transfer. So that brings us to the Transfer Family. Again, both Russ and I are from the Transfer Family service. It is a cloud MFT solution offered by AWS. And it's really focused on this notion of we want to help customers take their existing traditional infrastructures and move them to the cloud. And a lot of the things that we see as challenges are these solutions generally touch lots of external parties. Some of our customers have tens, hundreds, thousands of partners that are connecting on a daily, weekly basis to this infrastructure. And asking them to go and reconfigure even things like usernames or keys, host names or whatever becomes an impediment to continuing your business operations. So we want to make that very seamless to move that infrastructure over to the cloud without impacting your partners. It is a fully managed service, so putting that M back into MFT. And what I mean by that is we, as the service team, as AWS, operate that infrastructure for you. We make sure it's available 7x24 across 25 regions across the globe, including China and GovCloud. And it has all those security capabilities built in and helps you comply to your regulations. Again, that native integration with AWS services that I mentioned. It's also a pay-as-you-grow model, so it's built to not have you think about how much infrastructure do I need, spend for that up front, but literally create your servers in the cloud and pay as you go and as you need and as you use those. It's actually very simple to use. So within 6 clicks, you can actually set up a server in the cloud and have your partners connecting to that and starting to exchange files. I mentioned this notion of migrating is a really important aspect that we think about for customers because most of our customers are moving off of an existing infrastructure. So generally what we see is that you have users and clients, some type of client software connecting to that corporate data center. And what we want is that transition to be very seamless. So we replace that corporate data center environment with the AWS cloud, and your users are now connecting directly into a hosted server in Transfer Family. Again, this is meant to be no change to your existing users, so they shouldn't really notice anything is different. No infrastructure for you to manage anymore. We take on that burden. And the data from your partners now becomes immediately accessible in your cloud storage. So again, S3 or EFS is what we support today. And then if you're building solutions off of that, so for example, many customers use S3 as their data lake, and behind that they have some type of machine learning or AI reading from that data. They might have some analytics applications. They might have an ETL process that gets kicked off to get that data into a database for further analysis or for an application. And all of that becomes very seamless once the data is deposited into your cloud storage. So we've actually been, we're on our 4th year as a service. We launched the service 4 years ago at reInvent, so it's our 4-year anniversary, if you will. And we've been adding a number of new capabilities over those years. And just in the last year, we've added a number of really interesting capabilities. I'm not going to actually go through all of these because you'll see many of these in action in Russ's demo. But I'll point out a couple of the more interesting ones. Last year, we actually announced a workflow capability as part of transfer. And a workflow framework basically allows you to automate what happens to the files as they come in. So you might have a partner upload a document, and you want to kick off a set of steps before that document becomes usable. You might want to scan it for malware or tag it or copy it or things like that. And so we built a general purpose engine to allow you to do many things. And we've spent a lot of this year making a number of enhancements to our workflow capability to be more flexible and cover many more use cases for our customers. We have many customers that have very stringent compliance requirements, and even something that seems very simple, like a login banner, is very impactful for their operations. So when a user logs in, being able to customize what they see initially. So you could have a kind of a click to accept policy or a set of disclosures, disclaimers, et cetera, for external parties before they access your resources. We also announced a new protocol in the fall of this year called AS2. AS2 is, we'll talk about that a little more, and you'll see it in the demo. It's being used very heavily in supply chains and actually many new industries now, because it's got some built-in PKI frameworks, so specifically certificates and keys that allow you to sign and encrypt the file transfers. So this is really helpful when your file transfers are legally binding documents, things like purchase orders, things that you want to have some type of non-repudiation capabilities or notification that the party received it. So that's been one of our newest capabilities in the family. And another one that I'll point out is multiple host keys per server. And so many customers want to have different sets of users using different types of encryption algorithms. And so being able to support multiple of those server host keys on a single server allows you to essentially have fewer servers that you have to maintain. And again, these are all important things that we hear from our customers every day to make sure they can migrate and operationalize a managed file transfer in the cloud. The other thing we see that's really important is, again, file transfer is used for a lot of these critical business processes or these workflows that are carrying important information from your partners into your business. And many times you want to make sure that's fully customized to your specific business requirements. So earlier this year, or actually in the fall of this year, we announced what we call a service delivery program. This is a set of very key partners that we work with that have achieved a level of capabilities with Transfer Family and have knowledge around MFT and can help you basically build a customized solution. So you might need something, for example, that uses Okta for custom authentication, so you don't have to manage all your user authentications and authorizations. If you're already using a third-party IDP, you want to be able to leverage that. So these partners can help build those kind of customized solutions. Many of these partners are here at the show. They're also listed on our webpage. So if you need help implementing transfer, again, we have a lot of resources now available to do that. So let me talk about a couple of quick case studies. I'll start with FINRA. FINRA actually regulates the securities industry in the United States. And their job is to basically process billions of market events per day. And what they were doing, or what they were faced with, was a file transfer infrastructure where they had to handle all of the operational burden for thousands of external users and 6 million file transfers per month. And what they wanted to do was create a new solution that they call FileX that would centralize all the different ways that their partners, who are the member brokers that they're regulating, can use to send their information into their data lake. And they wanted that data lake to be S3. So they set up, they have different ways for their member brokers to transfer that information. And one of those ways is allowing them to continue to use the file transfer that they were using before. So they leveraged transfer to build a cloud MFT that is supported under the FileX platform that allows them to get that data from their member brokers directly into the data lake, where they can start processing and looking for anomalies to provide that oversight. So this allowed them to remove their existing infrastructure with no maintenance or upkeep, natively leverage S3 as their data lake, and allow their external users to continue to use the same mechanisms they were using for authentication. So again, those external parties didn't have to change how they sent the files to FINRA. Whole Foods actually has an internal use case, meaning they're actually using SFTP to allow their internal business partners to send data for batch upload into their internal SaaS tools like Coupa and Workday. So they were maintaining their own SFTP environment. This became very burdensome for them to scale and to secure on a continual basis. And what they really wanted was a solution that could be deployed as infrastructure as code. So they leveraged the Transfer Family API, so everything we build for transfer is actually fully programmatic, to build essentially a infrastructure as code model where they could deploy new servers programmatically. They could do things like key rotation, basically all the operations they needed to do to maintain their solution for their internal business partners could be done in a programmatic manner. So this allowed them to increase the security while reducing that operational burden and keep their internal business processes working the same way they had been working. Finally, I'll talk about Walla News. Walla is an Israeli company that is part of Jerusalem Post, and they were actually experiencing networking issues. They were sending what's called HLS files, or HTTP live streaming files, from their on-premises data center, where it was encoded, into their streaming platform. And they were seeing lots of networking connectivity and latency issues. So they wanted to move that all to the cloud. They created a cloud MFT using the FTP protocol that allowed them to increase their performance and move past the connectivity and latency issues they were seeing. But more importantly, it allowed them to get their encoded files directly into S3, from which they could make it available using Amazon CloudFront for their CDN. So again, it simplified the process to get their real-time streaming out to their subscribers. We have actually tens of thousands of customers now on Transfer. This is just a small sampling, and many of these use cases that you saw, and a wide variety of other use cases. So I'll stop here before we get to the demo, and I'll leave you on this quote from Liberty Mutual, who says, AWS Transfer Family does the heavy lifting, is easy to deploy, and provides countless advantages from an operational perspective. So I think this underlies what I've been trying to say, is that we tried to build transfer so that it removes the heavy burden of file transfer. We know that it's still a critical workload in many companies. Allows companies to move to the cloud without having to change how their partners connect, and makes that data easily available for the rest of their cloud applications and analytics platforms. So with that, we're going to move to a demo, and you're going to see all this in action. And I will hand it over to Russ. Oops. I might have switched you over already.
We want to stay on the slides for one more second.
You're
all right. Can you hear me? Yeah. All right. Awesome. So before we go right into the demo, I'm just going to sort of set it up, just so you have a little bit of an idea of what exactly is happening in this demo. So I'm going to be leveraging an SFTP server hosted in a Transfer Family service. That SFTP server is backed up by S3, so all the data is going to be landing in S3. We're going to be using a Lambda function to authenticate the users. So the idea being we want to actually, in this case, use a third-party identity solution where the credentials are stored directly in RDS. Interestingly, this solution also can use keys that are stored in S3 to enable manual key rotation by the end user itself. So the idea here is you've got this database, you want to be able to configure your users. Perhaps you want to open this up through some sort of, third-party portal to allow a separate team. One of the things is this separation of duties, the role-based access controls. How can I just have a team that can set up my users? So that's the idea here behind this architecture. So that's what we're going to be walking through. So we're going to switch to the demo now. And here we go. All right. So I'm in this file transfer portal. So this is a portal that's actually in the process of getting open sourced, and it's going to be released as part of a blog post, we hope by the end of January. So hopefully everything you see here will be available for you to deploy with a CloudFormation template, out in the future here in just a few weeks. But just to show you how it works, I'm not sure if you can see the font out there. I'm going to go ahead and just zoom in just a slight bit. And I'm going to go ahead and add a user. And we'll go ahead and call this STG live, and we'll just say the last name is reinvent. And we'll go ahead and say STG live user. And see if I've got an email address. I just set up a quick throwaway Gmail for this, so don't spam me after the show, because I'm going to delete it, I promise. We have the ability to assign a role here. Role is either an admin, this is somebody who can manage users, or just a user, this is just somebody who can authenticate. In this case, I'll just select user. This organization piece is really for sending out things like maintenance notifications. It doesn't actually regulate what the end user can access. That would be managed in the directory mappings. So I'm going to save this. You see here I could have actually generated a key pair for the user, and in that case, the user would be able to manage that, using that key or access using that key. So you see here this directory mappings. So this is our facility inside the Transfer Family service for refining the namespace of data that the end user can see. So, we have a three-tiered approach. We're going to cover that in more detail. But logical directories is where you can just kind of set up a home directory or a shared directory for access for things like read-only file sets. So I'm just going to add a default mapping for this user. I'm going to enable writing, and I'm going to save it. So I've added my user. Just to be totally transparent, I'm not going to do the demo using that user because I don't want anything to break in front of you. I want you to actually see the demo work. So I'm going to use a user that I previously created, but I just wanted to show you that whole process so you could understand. So now on the back end, if we go look at our Transfer Family server, this is the server that we're going to be logging into. And this server, you see my identity type here on the right-hand side is custom Lambda. I'm calling a Lambda function that on the back end is going to be accessing that database to authenticate the end user. So that's what's happening in the chain of events. And if we scroll down a little bit in the configuration, you'll notice that under the additional details section, we have a workflow attached to this server. So this is the feature that Matt was talking about where we can go ahead and process the file. We can do something with it. So it's not good enough in the cloud native space just to get the file there. You may need to do some things with it. And what I've identified here is the most common pattern I see amongst customers doing managed file transfer. So let's go look at that workflow. So first thing I'm going to do is make a preserved archive copy of the file as I received it from the end user. So I can keep it around forever. Maybe in this use case, I'm just copying it off into a different prefix, archive prefix, but maybe you want to send it to a completely different bucket that has a really aggressive lifecycle policy to send it to Glacier or Glacier Deep Archive, and you just got to hold on to it for whatever your 7 to 10 years for your compliance requires, right? So that's the idea with that copy step, is I'm just going to go ahead and that's a pre-built API. So in that step, you're just going in there, you're saying, I want to make a copy, and you're telling it where you want the copy to be made in the configuration details. The next thing I'm going to do with this particular file I'm going to upload is I'm going to decrypt it. So it's PGP encrypted file, in this case ASCII encrypted, and I'm going to go ahead and have a Lambda function that's going to pick that file up, it's going to decrypt that file, and it's going to drop it off in a staging folder decrypted. So we'll see all of that happen as well. After we have decrypted the file, we are going to feed it through ClamAV, and we're going to malware scan it to ensure that the file integrity is good before we do anything else with the file. The last step is once we've gotten the file, we've decrypted the file, we've gone ahead and ClamAV scanned it, and it has passed its ClamAV scan, we're going to send the end user, which is me, a notification that says, hey, we got your file, everything's good. And then we're going to go back into the inbox where the file was originally uploaded and delete the original file so that we can keep the inbox clean. So I'm actually going to go ahead and upload a file. As soon as my Cloud Shell refreshes. But while we are waiting for that to happen, I'm going to go ahead and show you in CloudWatch under the log groups. So everything's getting centrally logged with the Transfer Family server. So this is my Transfer Family server, and we can see we have log stream here. We got an error where I tried to authenticate earlier with the wrong password, so that's showing up in this error stream. That was the most recent thing. But we also get events that are logged that show what files I uploaded, what the size of the file was, what the path to the data is, and what workflows were executed. So we're going to revisit this after I upload the file so you can see what gets logged here. All right, so I am going to go ahead and go into my demo directory. And I've got a little scratch pad here with, just so I don't have to make you watch me type all this stuff out. And we're going to go ahead and SFTP to this server. Which will be a lot more fun with the mouse. So just to show you really quickly this particular user, if I go back in my user admin portal, this is the user that I'm logging in as. And if we go and we look at the directory mappings, we'll see that I have a home folder that's mapped to the logical directory. What the logical directory does is give you a friendly name that the end user can see, in this case personal, and maps it to a prefix for the path in the bucket that actually has more meaning for you as the MFT operator. So in this case, just based on the username itself. So just wanted you to see when I log in, if I see, do an LS, I see my personal directory, and if I CD into that directory, and I can put this test file that I've got out here, and I've uploaded the file. So let's go back to our Transfer Family server. And we're in our workflow that I configured earlier. And if we refresh the view and we scroll down, we'll see that we actually have an active execution of this workflow. So this is tracking all of the steps that this workflow, it's letting me know, hey, your workflow is processing a file. And if we look, we can actually even see what the file it's processing is. So in a shorter form workflow, you might actually have to be quick to catch this. In this case, I'm doing quite a bit of processing to the file, so I kind of knew it was going to show up. You can also find all of this execution detail in CloudWatch logs themselves. And so we're actually going to step out and go to the CloudWatch logs, and we're going to refresh our view. And this is the log stream for the server itself that I'm logged into. And we'll see, here that I connected, that I opened and uploaded the file, and then I closed the file, meaning that I completed the upload. And if we go now out to S3, and we want to refresh our view so that we can see what's happened inside of our bucket. So you'll see now in my bucket, I have this archive folder that showed up. And if I go in this archive folder, I see I have a username-based folder, and here is my original file. So this is my copy for archive that I made. It could have been into a different bucket, but here it is. It's all preserved. And if I go back into my bucket itself, and I go under this decrypted files folder, I see I have another username-based directory, and in here now, I have this test file 1.txt. I'm going to go ahead and download that file from S3, and I'm going to open it. And we're going to zoom in a little bit, just so you can see what we're looking at. So this is my decrypted file. So the file got uploaded, it got decrypted, it got written out to this directory, and the contents just say this is a test file for PGP. So now I've gotten this file, I've decrypted it, and I've loaded it in. But that means I also antivirus scanned it. So let's go look at the CloudWatch logs again. And we'll go back to our log stream. We'll refresh just to ensure that we have the latest and greatest. And we'll see, we have some workflow executions that they take a few minutes to show up, so it's not as exciting, but what we'll do instead is we'll go look at the log stream for the ClamAV Lambda function itself. And so we see here that we have a log stream, open. We can open that up, and we can see that we got our file, we extracted from the event. So what happens when a workflow executes, it actually feeds an event into the step from the Lambda function. You can query that event, and it's just a key pair, based file where you can get the file name, the username, all of those important details can just be grabbed out of that array in whatever Lambda function that you set up. And in this case, we can see that we completed the processing here, and if you really have good eyes, you can see that the number of infected files was 0. So this was our ClamAV scan of the file that we uploaded. So now that we have uploaded our file, we've decrypted our file, we've staged our file out to another directory, we have made sure that the file has good integrity, maybe what we want to do in this use case is say that I'm a distributor and I have received over MFT this file, which is an order. And that order I need to now send downstream to one of my suppliers over my EDI. So this would be an AS2-based operation. I need to share this file out, and that EDI operation will actually go ahead and trigger some sort of order or shipping request back to me. So I'm actually going to go ahead and use a transfer family service to do that as well. So as we mentioned earlier, we did launch the AS2 protocol back in July. And if we go here and look in my Scratch file, you'll notice that I've got this start file transfer. So this is our ability to use AS2 to send a file out. And wouldn't you know it, I'm going to run into a problem here. Let me refresh my Cloud Shell, and we'll go do that again. Well, I have no idea why that's not working. I'm not going to make you watch the whole video, but essentially what happens is this sends it out over the connector. The connector will send it to a transfer family server downstream that I've configured over the AS2 protocol. Oh, did I miss the AWS? You're absolutely right. Thank you, kind sir. Raise your hand. You get extra stickers. That was awesome. Thank you so much. I just missed it in my copy paste. Or actually, I've got an idea. Oh, did I miss the transfer too? I swear, we'll get there. We're going to do this. We're all going to do this together.
This is what happens in every meeting with a director level.
Of course.
Murphy's Law.
Victory. Okay, so now I have called it. Thank you so much. You're all too kind, helping me with my demo and everything. This is fantastic. So I kicked off this connector. Let's go look at the connector really quickly. I know we got started a little late, so I don't want to run us out of time. But if we go here into our transfer family service, you'll see connectors here. Connectors is simply the ability to configure this outbound AS2. So if we go look at our connector that I called in that particular command, you'll see that it has a lot of configuration details. I won't get into, if you don't know AS2 and you don't use AS2, there's a lot of stuff to learn. But you got to encrypt the file, you got to sign the file, and you have to be able to then send it to a partner downstream. So there's a partner agreement. All of these things have to be configured. In the connector details, you're just telling it, hey, this is where I want the file to go, which is what's represented here in this URL. And you're telling it who the source partner is and who the target partner is, what encryption settings you want to use, what signing settings you want to use. If we go back to the transfer family service and we go to servers, you'll see I have this other server set up that's listening on the AS2 protocol, and if we scroll down, we see that I do have a partner agreement configured in advance that tells the transfer family service what to do when it receives a file, from that partner. And it also makes sure that everything is encrypted and signed correctly, which if we go into our S3 bucket, we can see here under processed, we get these MDN files. This just verifies as a chain of custody that all the signatures and encryption and everything was validated. So all of that gets stored in the bucket, it gets logged out to CloudWatch, and that's really end-to-end, the whole thing happening in the transfer family server by pulling in other AWS services. So we're going to pivot back to our presentation. I'm just going to walk you really quickly through the features that I used to build this demo, just so you have an idea of what it takes to build this. Yes, sir?
So the demo was obviously customer end. There are two more questions. Can we go the other way? Should we manage file transfer both ways? So can we drop a file in S3 and get it sent out to
So you need to send files outbound over, so we did send a file outbound over AS2. Do you need to send those files outbound over what protocol?
but it does both ways.
So the connectors is the outbound connection, yes, in the transfer family service.
Our second question, is it HTTP based? I know AS2 is not, but so one of the problems we've got is we've got thousands of customers, 20,000 customers in those files. A lot of them have private set up. So they don't have to go over that.
So it sounds like we have a strong +1 for file transfers over the HTTPS protocol or HTTP? Okay. Yeah, so today we operate SFTP, FTPS, FTP, AS2. We do track some demand.
Yes.
Under the covers, yes, absolutely, you are correct. But sending it over the raw HTTPS protocol is not part of the service. But I would love to connect with you to learn a little more about what you need to do. Just really quickly, we have a broad set of authentication models. You can use the built-in service managed users. You can use third-party identity like I did today, which was just based around a database. You can use directory services just for simple password-based authentication. You can use AD a managed AD or an AD connector that's going out and connecting downstream to one of your self-managed ADs, for example. All of these options are available, and it just really depends on what you need to support as far as, we have several identity solutions available in our blog channel. For example, Secrets Manager is out there in our blog channel. These slides will be distributed as a PDF after the event, and you'll be able to follow these links right to the blog post. If this is something you want to learn more about, you can deploy it with a CloudFormation template. Question over here?
Yeah. So can we use workflow in conjunction with S3 without the transfer family?
Well, so workflow is a transfer family specific.
So based on events that get triggered as and when objects are managed with S3.
There is a way to do that with S3. You can use S3 put events to trigger any file processing you want to do for things that are written directly into S3.
Right, but that would require doing that instead using an event trigger or events using Lambda or something. But can we have something like the workflow also be used directly when things are uploaded to S3 rather than coming into the transfer family?
Understood. It would be a bit outside the scope of the transfer family service. But it does sound like some interesting feedback I could pass along to my colleagues on the S3 team. So your idea would be, hey, I want something just like workflows and transfer family for uploading a file directly into S3.
But if I was already in cloud and if I'm doing operations on S3, can that also leverage workflow to a set of actions based on what I'm doing?
Well, you can always upload it through the transfer family service. So we would love for you to, right? Yeah, there's definitely many ways to process a file. Using something like Event Bridge, throw it on SQS, pick it up from there with something like a step function. There's a lot of different, things we could do to process that file. Yes?
Is there any recommendations to fail over from North Virginia to another region? Recently there was an issue with authentication, but on our basis, we hadn't built any sort of HA regional failover. Is there any sort of recommendation for that on how that's done, how we can do that? Or?
So I would love to connect with you immediately after this because we do have some customers doing some POCs around multi-region, and I'd like to talk to you about that architecture, but I don't want to swamp us because it's a big topic. But happy to discuss, for real. So in this case, I just wanted to show this third-party authentication mechanism simplified. I just called it over a Lambda function from RDS. That's what you saw in today's demo. And we used ECS based application to do that front-end management of the user. That's the web portal that I was logged into. We could have used AD, right? We could have used AD connector. We could have used managed AD. I did that in my demo last year. If you want to go back and watch it, I used AD as my authentication mechanism in that one. You could use Active Directory as an external third party. You don't have to use AD over managed AD or directory services. You can do either an LDAP or API-based lookup of a user directly into AD. So if you need to do something a little more flexible, such as use a competitor's AD solution, it is possible. And I have very good news if you're looking to do that. There is a blog post in staging right now, so it should go out within the next 2 weeks, that will give you a CloudFormation template to be able to deploy just that architecture. So we talked about, refining the namespace for the user. So we have a 3-tiered approach. We start with IAM. That regulates what buckets or file systems, prefixes, etc., that you want the end user to be able to access when they log in. Every user that logs in the transfer family gets mapped to an IAM role. And then from there, we can use other tools at the storage level, like S3 access points, to affect things like asynchronous. Like maybe I need an asymmetrical presentation. I need a read-only folder over here, read-write folder over there. I don't want to write some really complex IAM role. I can just send one path down an S3 access point, for example. Or in the case of EFS, we can go all the way down to a per file basis for access using a POSIX ID along with the transfer family service. And then at the bottom level, we have our transfer family specific logical directories. When you use logical directories, you automatically cheroot the user into whatever directories you configure. So they're not going to be able to see anything else or step out of that directory. So yeah, that's the most common way that people are doing multiple directory presentations out to an end user, is to use logical directory mappings. So, you know, just blue, right, oh, well, S3 access points, we talked about that. You know, this is just so that you can configure these logical directory mappings either directly. We do have a great blog post about this, again, that you'll be able to go learn about how to do that. And then EFS for even more granular file control. And this architecture is a really interesting one, using EFS to do subscription distribution, and they needed to be able to control it all the way down to a per file level. And they're actually using hard links in the file system that are all tracked in a Dynamo database table to be able to present out the same file across a big, you know, swath of users without having to store multiple copies. So you get a lot of flexibility using EFS as your back-end storage if you need to control at a granular level all the way down to a per file. So, you know, this again was the architecture. I wanted to zoom back out because now we're going to look at the actual workflow pieces. You know, what did I do with workflows to make all of this work? So, you know, Matt talked really well about what the workflows are. You've seen it in action. I won't spend a lot of time just making sure you understand it's file processing as the files flow through your MFT. In this particular case, you know, I had a series of steps pre-configured. I was copying it. I skipped over the tagging part, but we can also apply tags inline. So if you want to tag a file, you know, it's like, oh, it came in through my MFT. Like if you're mixing a bunch of data in the same bucket, this might be a good way to have good hygiene for later selectively life-cycling files and things like that. And then you can do these custom steps using Lambda to call other AWS services or just to process the file for something like a PGP decrypt right inside of a Python script. We have an exception handler. What does that do? It allows you to configure an alternate set of steps. In the event you run into a problem with processing your file, you can actually have an alternate set of steps. So a really common use case here would be if that CLAM AV had been a positive virus scan, maybe you want to just delete the file and send the end user a notification that says, hey, you uploaded a file that was infected. Here's the name of the file. You know, so that could be your exception steps. You know, PGP decrypt, I just called a custom Lambda function. This is available on YouTube and in GitHub. So if you want to do PGP decrypt with our service, you can find it at this link down at the bottom of the page. It will be in the slide deck that gets distributed. Or you can just go to YouTube and search for AWS Transfer Family PGP and hear one of the smartest interns I've ever worked with walk you through this whole solution and send you to the GitHub to deploy it. Malware scan, same idea. In this case, we use a publicly distributed CLAM AV container. We're feeding that file through that container, and then there is an operation to refresh that container on a daily basis with new definitions. That's distributed out, you know, through the ECR repository from CLAM AV project directly. And this, again, is something that we're working on releasing by the end of January in our blog channel as well. We see a lot of customers asking for antivirus solution, and I've actually been approached by a few who came and just to see this demo, specifically to learn about the CLAM AV solution. So this is going to be available in our blog channel. You'll be able to deploy it in an automated fashion in your account so you can learn more. And it was enabled by a Lambda function calling that container. So it parsed that event that I was talking about, it got the file path, and it sent that off to the container. The container itself has access to that S3 bucket and can copy the file in and scan it. So it keeps it all modular so that you're isolating your, you know, it's a single task through ECS so that you don't have to worry about if there is a payload, you know, that container's going to die off and go away. And the next time it relaunches, it launches a new container.
Wasn't this
Well, so we don't have a native AV scan built into workflows. So I have a Lambda function that fed the file through to this ECS container, and the ECS container did that.
One of the steps you can do in a workflow is a custom step, which basically invokes a Lambda routine.
Last thing I did as part of our demo was I used our new AS2 function to send out, thanks to everyone in the room who would help me sort out my CLI commands due to my nerves. But this, with our connectors feature, this is our first time sending files outbound, so this is a new concept for us. So you configure those separately as a connector. We can receive files over a server. We can send files out over a connector. This is really necessary to get into the AS2 space because it's kind of a send-only protocol. Unlike our other protocols, you're not logging in with a client and doing an LS and seeing a list of files. It's really, I'm sending a specific file to a specific partner at any given moment. So it's a little different from our other protocols in that regard. So we launch connectors along with that. So the key things we want you to take away is that you can build an MFT inside of Transfer Family service, bringing in other services modularly. If you lack the expertise to be able to do that in-house, we have this SDP program. We have partners that are vetted, that have presented back to us architectures that we have inspected and ensured. We do have partners that do specific specialties like antivirus with the Transfer Family service. So, definitely if you need that kind of help, please talk to your account manager, talk to your SA, get connected in with an SDP partner, and we can help get them pointed in the right direction based on what your use case is. You can build everything that I built here. There were different modules built by different SAs, but everything you saw today was built by 5 SAs. So, I built some of it, had an intern build some of it, but it is possible, it can be done. But if you cannot do it yourself, we can get you help. Yes? What is there a specific performance target you're looking for, or?
How fast is it? So the use case is that you have a partner that wants share, you get to a different partner who wants. The way I built it is I just have like an S3 bucket that you have access to.
Sure.
This one's interesting, so it's not that.
So we're actually compatible with Global Accelerator as well. There's a blog post about configuring Transfer Family with Global Accelerator that might actually be able to get you even more performance out of the solution. We scale linearly, up to 10,000 simultaneous connections. So we're built more for multi-tenant, without losing or losing bandwidth. Like when you get to the 1,000th connection, should be just as fast as the first connection. So for specifically sending like an individual large file, I would look at Global Accelerator along with Transfer Family. So, some additional sessions. If you want to learn how to use Transfer Family with a really cool data lake use case, on Thursday, there's a repeat session of STG334. And you can get hands-on with the service. And you can upload a whole bunch of W2 images, and it's really cool. TextTrack's going to get all that text data out of those images, load them into a data lake, and you're going to go run Athena queries and learn, what does that data science life look like. So you have a little Transfer Family, a little data lake. If that's interesting to you, please check out STG334. I did see I had one more question.
Yeah, so you mentioned you provision a server. Can you speak to the high availability, the redundancy of a single server, or is it actually?
So, it's a misnomer to call it a server because it's really a service. So we call it a server just because that's the nomenclature you're familiar with, but really it's a combination of many services under the covers providing high availability across 3 AZs. So we consider it a regional service. So you'd have to lose 3 AZs to lose your Transfer Family server effectively. if that makes sense. And then we have, some people that are looking for multi-region, and we're going to connect after class. So we really appreciate you showing up. We had some rocks in the beginning, and I appreciate everybody's help on the API call. Thank you very much.